Welcome to the Financial Planners South Africa podcast, a show dedicated to driving the positive evolution of financial advice, specifically in South Africa. To join a global community of financial advisors, sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice, head to xyadvisor.com. Portfolio Metrics is thrilled to bring you this podcast in support of our common passion for people and the evolution of wealth management. Our global business links precision investment management to expert financial advice through partnerships and technology. Visual, interactive, meaningful, productive. 4 values underpinning AssetMap, a financial planning platform loved by advisors and their clients. This episode is proudly brought to you by Alan Gray. They say it's important to live for today. Although that might be true, we can't forget to plan for tomorrow. There's a lot of it left, after all. Alan Gray is an authorized financial services provider. Visit www.alangray.co.za to learn how we build long-term wealth for clients. Good afternoon, Dirk Groeneveld. Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. You are well known in the industry to many, someone that speaks their mind. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation.
Thanks, Louis. Thanks for the invite. I do speak my mind sometimes, but hopefully not to offend anybody.
Yeah. So today's conversation, really, we want to unpack a little bit of your history, how you got into the industry, some of the interesting stories that you've shared with me, but also then focus on a little bit on your practice. You know, what's working, what have you tried to implement, and where you see the future. So if you don't mind just starting off for us and giving us a little bit of a brief introduction to who Dirk is.
Sure, Louis. Well, look, my journey started nearly 30 years ago as a, 23-year-old. I had finished school, done a marketing diploma, done my national service, been overseas, and I got back home and my dad told me I needed to get a job. So I didn't know what I was going to do. He introduced me to his advisor, his broker at that time, and the first company turned me down because of my age. And the next company employed me because the branch manager went to the same school as myself. So I started off in a company called Southern Life, which has eventually been taken over by Momentum. And I started in the field division. In those days, we had there were no computers. We had a rate book, so we were sent to Cape Town for 2 weeks on a course, learn how to do quotes real time on the back of a cigarette box or on a notepad, and then we were sent out to sell in, all kinds of setting techniques and closing techniques. So that's where I started. From there, after a few years, I left and was asked to join a new business, which had been started by an individual who had run a very successfully for financial planning, well, not financial planning, a broking business, and sold to a corporate. He was starting something new. Unfortunately, after about 3 months, I worked out that the ethics, the way of doing business wasn't quite what appealed to me. So I had to leave and go on my own. And I was very fortunate then that a friend I'd worked with at Southern Life had joined another corporate and asked me to join to run their financial planning division, which I then did. So I was into corporate. And then about 2001, we had the rand was taking a hell of a whack against your harder currencies. We had the IT boom, which those then simultaneously almost collapsed. And it was up until then, it was at that time that I realized that as much I was trying to add value to clients, I was not. I was simply an intermediary pushing product for the big asset managers and life companies. And I really, I felt worthless, and I considered leaving the industry. Nothing against used car salesmen, but I deemed that as being a far more honorable practice than I was involved in. And then I was very fortunate that I heard about a business called IPAC, which had been brought to South Africa from Australia by Andrew Bradley. I flew to Cape Town, met with him, told him what my issues were, and he showed me what they were about, which was a new concept called lifestyle financial planning. It absolutely fitted what I was missing, and I flew back to Port Elizabeth the next day, and that was it. One of the big changes was I had to move from commission to fees, and I did that immediately. So that was quite an adjustment. I had to make a lot of personal changes in my living standards, let's say, the vehicles I drove, the houses I lived in, and I had to do all of that, which I then did. I then, a few years later, then actually opened my own business and client care, which has now been running for going on 20 years now. I fully embraced lifestyle financial planning. And I suppose the rest is history.
Oh, brilliant. That really is a journey. Can we spend a bit of time defining lifestyle financial planning? To a lot of people listening to this, they might think, oh, but I do lifestyle financial planning because I ask my clients what is important to them. How do you define, and more particularly, how do you explain lifestyle financial planning to your clients?
Well, Louis, to be honest, I think it's morphed, and it's one of these things that I think we need to get better at, and when we never get there. Initially, what was brilliant is that there was a model. There was a tool we could use. We didn't have to be fund pickers anymore. There were funds which were inflationary targeted. The first ones in South Africa, in fact, which is just about 22 years ago. So initially it was about being able to basically do cash flow planning as we know today in a very, very basic sense. But then as we got into it, it became more and more about the conversations. And I honestly believe that that's what it is today. The whole industry revolves, I think, internationally around asset management. And at the end of the day, it comes down to that. That's how most of us get paid. That's why the companies do what they do. But it really is more about how I would explain it to a client is that we focus on you and not your money. Your money is important, but only to the extent that we help you build an investment strategy that talks back to the kind of life that you would like to live into the future and presently. So it really is, a lot of people use the word client focused, but it really is in another way. And it is also, it is helping clients make their own decisions. So it's not about having the solution for the client. It's about helping the client arrive at the solution on their own, because that is really the only way that they're going to change their behavior and then achieve ultimately what they would like.
Yeah, I would imagine that you have a much higher buy-in from your clients. If you guide them through this decision-making process that you talk about.
Yeah, we do, because I think the industry has forever and still does. It chooses to keep the general public confused because it suits them, and people don't ask too many questions. And I think when part of our job is to simplify all the financial terms and what it means, and help clients understand that their power is really in the choices that they make, both now and into the future, and to understand that they actually have control, where I think a lot of, in the past, the industries said, just leave it to us and we'll do it for you. So yes, it definitely allows clients to feel empowered, and that in turn, I think, gives them a lot of freedom.
Yeah, great. Are you able to share a little bit of the onboarding process that you would take a new client through? Because oftentimes it sounds like, well, this lifestyle financial planning is a lot more work than just, building an investment portfolio for a client.
Yeah, I think it is a lot more work, and it's completely different. So, just on the investment side, we have partnered with asset management team that do that for us for the last 20 years, and they just got inflation plus targets, which they do achieve over the long run. So that then talks back to the plan. But yeah, so we built a 3-meeting process that we take clients through. Most of the clients that come to us have been referred by existing clients. And the first meeting is really just a coffee chat where we get to know a little bit about them and why they're here, why they're not happy with who they're currently with, or problems or issues that they're having. And really what we provide them with is the opportunity to then enter our process. So in our first meeting, a lot of it is really just finding out about who they are individually, or as a couple, or as a family. What's unique about them, what are their motivators, just really, so a lot of history, finding out a lot about their past. I believe it's important to understand how someone has got to where they are, to understand who they are. And very often we find we ask them questions, and it's things that they haven't thought of for many, many years, but it has helped format the way that they think about their finances, or about life in general. So we do a bit of that, and then we also take them through our process, where we talk about now the three hats of lifestyle financial planning, which we like to use, which Paul Armson very kindly showed me. Yeah, and the different roles that we play, in life planning, financial planning, and then financial advice. And we build the expectation on what working with us will be like, what the actual practical part will be, how often we would meet, how we would meet, what we would discuss in those meetings. And most of it is not about funds or money. And that's generally about an hour. And then in our, if after that they're happy with what they've heard, and we also comfortable that we would be able to add value to them. At this point, we have no idea of the financial status of the couple. We purposely don't ask them to bring any information to that meeting, because we just find that, if you're looking at the money, it's as human as we are, it's difficult to look at the person separately. So if they're happy with that, then we will send them a welcome letter that evening, and then start dropping off information bits that they need to then collect and get back to us. In the second meeting, we have what we call is our goal setting meeting. We do a little bit more exploring into the personal side. In other words, how do they feel about money? What's important about money for them? About their family, important people in their lives, about how they feel about retirement, how they see retirement. And then obviously, the very general goal setting, which I'm starting to realize is more kind of, that stuff's always going to change, and it's not really as important, how often I replace my car or go on holiday. They are important factors, but it's not really as important as the deeper goals or ambitions that a person or a couple would have. By this time, normally we've collected most of the information. And then what we do is we're kind of following the 6-step financial planning process as per the Financial Planning Institute. And then we obviously sit and do a little bit of maths. And then we would sit with them and show them a snapshot of where they are. At that point, we'll also do a bit of education on markets. So we just talk about very basic principles about the need to beat inflation, the need to be exposed to risk, how markets work, short term, long term, but very, very basic principles that help them understand, why keeping their money in cash is probably not a good idea in the long run. And then we show them where they are, and then after that we've highlighted certain issues which we believe are important, and this again would be fairly general stuff, or we would get clarity on certain things that we had picked up, and and then we go into discussion from that, and that meeting can last a while, and then obviously you get clients with different complexities. And based on that, after that meeting, we would then go back and do a bit more work, or they would do a bit more work and get us more information, and then we would do more work. And we'd really just carry on with that process until, we've achieved everything that they need. So very often there's a list of things that need to be done, things like updating wills, checking trusts, businesses, structures, and partnership agreements, all those kinds of things. So very often that ongoing process can actually take us months a lot of the time. But the belief is that the more time we spend with our clients, the more we can build a relationship, the more trust we can build, and the more value we can add.
Sure, it really sounds like you've nailed down that process over the last couple of years. What's been one of the resources that have helped you think about structuring lifestyle financial planning? Or was this just something that you've managed to create?
I think it's from different sources. When IPAC became Axis and was then bought by Old Mutual, who started Old Mutual Wealth. So there was a process that they had put in place, which is pretty similar. Obviously, what we've done is we've enhanced it and we've personalized it more. I talk to a lot of people around the world. I read a lot, and I get quite snoopy. And I've met people like Paul and Mitch and Brett Davidson, and the list goes on. Just to find out and learn more from all of these people like yourself as well, obviously. And then obviously a lot of our we call them strategic partners. The whole IPAC and Access community has been fantastic in building community. The best place to learn is from other financial planners. And we built a community that is full of sharing and helping each other and all of that. So I think we all eventually build something which makes sense to us. And you put it together, and it's a bit rigid, and you work through it. But as you do it more and more, it becomes more your own. You own it. We constantly upgrade and change things. And then we also, as we learn, we get more experience. We're able to tweak it for certain clients. We can sense that certain clients, maybe need a different approach to others. But we do not work with anyone if they are not prepared to go through that process. And we've simply found out that if we do try and shortcut it, we get problems later on.
I think the name of your practice, Client Cares, sums it up so nicely, and it's come through a couple of times that you say, well, we really care about our clients, and it shows up by you taking the time to research things globally and saying, okay, how do we deliver the best possible financial planning and lifestyle financial planning experience to our clients? When you constructed your team in terms of the business, how do you select people and how did that happen?
Yeah, I got lucky. I got unlucky first. Over the years, I've been in one or two attempted partnerships, and they haven't really worked. Looking back, really, just because of, I suppose, different personalities, different outlooks, and different, I don't want to say values, but maybe vision. And I've just been very careful in when we choose people to work with us. I look more to the quality of the person and the values that person has. Obviously, depends on the work they're going to be doing in the business. But, I've found that if people with the right attitude and that caring attitude, what do they call it? The care gene or whatever. Those people can learn anything because, they work in an environment where they feel that they're part of a team and they feel that they're adding value. Then they're naturally going to be doing that. So, we have had to choose people who have qualifications, to full financial planning roles. So we have done that. We are doing that. The business is paying to educate existing staff who came in as a receptionist to become a financial planner. So, we make sure everyone within the business has their own career path if they want. In fact, we do want them to have a career path. To personal growth is important. But yeah, I think in short, just choosing the people with the right values and similar values. That doesn't mean the same strengths, different strengths, but similar values is really important. Because it does come through in how the clients feel when they deal with anybody in the business.
Yeah, Seth Godin talks about hire for attitude and train for skill. If you've got someone with the right attitude and the right vision, I guess that would also help you think about succession planning. Who are the people that you'd feel comfortable leaving part of your business to?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, I think it's something that, when you start off in this industry, as I said, selling policies, and to where we are now it's a completely different situation. And again, rightly or wrongly, a lot of people traditionally in this business look to build a book and then sell it for a multiple. I battle with that concept. I don't understand how we can sell a relationship, but it does happen. Yeah, so what we're doing, having identified a couple of individuals who have very similar values, want the same sort of thing long term, have patience, want to make a difference out there. The only way to really do that, to be honest, is for, I've got to give and they've got to give. So we're entering a process now where we will be selling, in inverted commas, shares to younger planners in the business to allow them to get skin in the game. They don't necessarily have the funding, so we assisting with that. But the idea is that in the long run, instead of having 100% of a pie, we're going to have a percentage of a much, much bigger pie. The one side is making as much money as we can, and I think most people will have learned that that doesn't bring happiness. But being part of something that is meaningful, that's for me, and I think the people we have in the business, that really makes life worth living. So that's the path that we chosen, and that we're working towards. We don't have all the answers as to how it'll work, but certainly bringing in caring individuals, and the goal is to build something which is bigger than ourselves, and that continues. It'll never be, no one's going to sell the business one day.
I can see how important these relationships, not only with your clients, but also with your team members are. Are there any client stories that stand out in your mind over looking back over your career so far? Anything that's memorable that you feel comfortable sharing with us?
Louis, there are two. The one is on both ends of the scale. Let's talk about wealth. So, we had this client I had for years, and he was a little trader, and he traded on his own, and he would sell to supermarkets and, put his children through varsity and everything. And he just worked and worked and worked. And he was getting to an age where his health was really starting to take strain. And as much as I would advise them to kind of cut the purse strings to some of the children, they just couldn't do it. And eventually one day they walked in and he looked an absolute mess. And I just said to him, "You've got to stop this now." And his wife was with him. And I said, "You have to stop this now. You have to make changes. Otherwise, in a year's time, you're going to be dead and your wife's going to be on her own." And she looked at him and he looked at her, and she just nodded and said, "That's exactly what's going to happen." And he said, "Yeah, okay, that's fine, but how do I do it?" So eventually what we had to do is they had a son who was living with them and not contributing, although he had a decent job. So eventually we had to sell their house, move them into a retirement village so that their son had to find his own way, and then close down his business, and restructure everything so that they were then able to retire and to actually live. And it's been tight for them, and there've been things that they haven't been able to do. But it was actually wonderful. He sent me a message last week or the week before. He was obviously in a reflective mood. They were spending time with their granddaughter, and he just sent us this message thanking us for the role that we had played in his life and what it meant. And he's just got a very different way of expressing himself. When I look at that, I mean, that's all he talks about. So making a difference like that, which was potentially very risky, but I think in the end you got to go with your gut and your heart, and you've got to give someone the courage to make that change. So that's a very special story to us. And then we have had another client on the other end of the scale who came referred to us by their children in their early 70s, more than enough well off, but who grew up in the war. And as many of us would know who had parents who grew up in the war, were extremely conservative, lived very, very frugally, had more money than they could ever spend, but struggled to spend it. Literally wouldn't go out and have a cappuccino because they felt it was overpriced. And unfortunately, the planner that they'd been with since their retirement was very much in the old dinosaur kind of framework, where he would send them a report once a week or once a year, and see them once a year, and just basically say, well, it's up or it's down or whatever. And we took them through our process, which was difficult because when you take someone in their 70s and you're asking them questions like, how was money growing up, and these kinds of things. But anyway, they participated fantastically, and it went really well. And he was an engineer, which makes it even more difficult because he's obviously quite analytical. I think 3 years we've been working with them now. After 18 months, they took their whole family, 5 kids, on holiday to the UK, flew a grandson in from the US, spent 2 or 3 weeks together, did overseas trips until COVID hit. They have just, recently they are helping a one child in the UK with a serious acquisition because of a health issue. They are doing things that they would never, ever have done before. Never, ever done before. And, ultimately they would have eventually passed away and their children would have had some of them would have had quite a lot of hardship and they wouldn't have been able to have those times together. So, and when they decided to work with me, when I actually showed them the modeling and I showed them that actually if they moved all their money into cash, they would never run out of money. She got very emotional and shed a tear, and I'm not sure if it was anger or out of relief. And I said to her, so why? What is the reason? She said, well, the last time they were with the advisor, as they were leaving, she turned to him and said, "Are we going to be okay?" And he looked at her and he said, "You should be." And she said she didn't sleep for a week. So having certainty to know that not only was she going to be okay, but she could start changing her outlook on life and start spending, more quality time with the family and loved ones. Again, I can see that we've really affected change in their lives, and yeah, that's what we're here to do.
Wow, thank you for sharing those stories with us, Dirk. You're actually bringing meaning to your clients' lives through helping them actually be able to enjoy their money and enjoy it with the people that are important to them. So I almost feel like, lifestyle financial planning doesn't sound like it would even encapsulate that, but it's just a byproduct of what you do.
Yeah, I think the job is to spend as much money as you can, and the problem that a lot of people who've built up wealth over a long period is that very often it's because they've saved really hard and conscientiously, and they feel guilty when it comes to spending money and having a good time. And, quite differently to, let's say, your older type advisors, we don't look to accumulate funds. Obviously we do as we gain clients under management or whatever you want to call it. But what we look at is how can we get clients to spend their money? And that's a lot of fun. That is a lot of fun, but that's very rewarding as well.
Can we maybe delve into that a little bit? Because, imagine there's a client coming to you that's getting to retirement, that's built up a wealth of money over the last 65 years. How do you get them to change from accumulating to being able to spend that money guilt-free? Like, what are the things that you would do in your business?
Look, Louis, there's some that we don't manage to do it, but that's fine. Yeah, I think giving them, obviously with all the planning that we do, we always err on the conservative side. As much as we plan, life happens, and and as we get older, those can be negative things as well. So, which could obviously mean incurring costs. So we try and plan for all of those and make allowances for all of those in our planning. But I think, again, spending more time with clients, if they hear the same thing over and over again, then eventually they will eventually start to believe it. And in our goal setting, in our exploratory meetings, finding out what it is that they want to do. What did they want to do when they were 18 years old? When they were 25, when they first got married, what were those things that they wanted? And then they'll come up with things, oh, we forgot about this completely. And very often what happens is things that they really, really want to do, once they start doing it, they find out actually it's not what they want to do. There's something completely different. So this goal setting thing, and as I said, goal setting, I think you've got to find another word for that. It's maybe life, I don't know, life experiences, I don't know. But I think it's an ongoing thing. When we do a review, you can't just sit and do a review and say, well, what happened over the last year and what are your plans and how did the money do? I think it's, you got to revisit every year and say, what's changed? What has changed about, obviously in your life, but then also about the way you feel about certain things, and when people retire, the best years they have are those immediate years when they stop work. When we're talking about health, we're talking about their ability to travel and be active and do things. So, it's all very well planning. for someone to the age of 105, and obviously it's important to do that, but not at the cost of not living in the present. So obviously finding that balance is important.
Yeah, I think so many times financial plans tend to be super conservative. And then the only thing that ends up is, their legacy or the inheritance just is that much more. But someone missed out on their, what they term the go-go years, right? So you have the energy you are able to spend. And it almost ties into, the George Kinder life planning questions, where they start off saying, well, if money wasn't a constraint, what would you do with your time? How would you spend money? And then from there, limit it to say, well, if you only had 10 years left to live, what would you do with your time? And then the third one really gets to the crux, where they're limited to say, well, you go to the doctor and you find out you only have 24 hours to live. Not what do you do, but what did you miss out on? Who did you not get to be? What did you not get to experience? And I can only imagine that these kind of things come up as you spend time with your clients discussing what's important to them.
No, they do. And again, certain clients get to that point a lot easier than others. And obviously, depending on the relationship we have with them, we can build a quicker rapport with certain people. But again, that's why we would rather choose to meet more often with our clients. So we have a fixed 6 monthly, the one meeting's a catch up and the other one's a full review of their financial plan and financial lifestyle plan and situation. But we also encourage contact, in between if anything happens. Yeah. And we also found that the more that people are actually reaching these dreams in their lifestyle and their goals, as they start living more of that life, they start looking for more. I think, moving from a working life to a retired life, we know can be very stressful for clients. So we also spend a lot of time before they retire educating them on what does it actually look like? What is it, trying to visualize what a day is going to look like in retirement.
Yeah, these upcoming transitions, what can you prepare for?
No, certainly.
The one thing that comes to mind is obviously advisor remuneration, because a lot of the things that you mentioned is, we're not gathering assets. We can only work with so many people. The money is less important. How do you balance remuneration? What does the structure look like? I know it's something that, you've thought about quite a lot, and just love to hear your thoughts around advisor remuneration.
Yeah, Louis. So, obviously, initially moving from commission to fees was really hard. It was very, very tough. And as I said, hugely at a downscale lifestyle. I got divorced around that time as well. So it wasn't an easy time, but at the same time, it wasn't a difficult time because I knew that what we were onto was something far more valuable in the long run. So there was that change. So that the assets under management, the AEM model, was a far fairer way of working. But as I'm getting into it more and more, and I'm also realizing it's not the ideal way to work because it doesn't really speak, if you look at the three hat scenario that Paul Armson created with life planner, financial planner, and financial advisor, we're getting played on the financial advisor side, whereas really where we add the least value. And
sorry, Dirk, do you just mind defining those three? Like, what are the differences between them?
Yeah, so the first hat and the most important is helping clients with their life planning. And that doesn't mean that we are a life planner. It simply means helping clients uncover what is important for them in their life and what they want to do. So it's like I say to you, the goals of buying a car every 5 years and going on holiday once a year, those are very, very simplified things. But life planning, we don't do life planning, but helping them with their life planning is helping them uncover their values, what is important to them, and if they travel, why they would want to travel, and where they would travel, and why there, and what do they want to do with their kids or their grandkids, and why is that important? So it really is that. And then the financial planning hat deals more with the mathematics of the situation. You've got X, Y, you've got X, you're spending Y. How must the money be invested to make sure that it doesn't run out before you run out? So it's really the cash flow planning and all of that. And then the financial advice is simply what vehicles do we use? So do we use retirement funds or shares or unit trusts? And then what funds do we use? Those kinds of things.
Okay, so the product implementation, part. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, and the irony is that we get paid on the financial advisor side, whereas we add far more value on the other two. So we use a assets under management fee scale at the moment, and we scale it down because I do believe the notion that if you're charging 1% on 10 million rand and you obviously earning what you do on that, and you would charge 1% on 50 million rand, that you're adding more value. I mean, I think most people will understand that just doesn't add up. So I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying, for my mind, it needs to be looked at. Obviously, the industry has always worked where there are clients who don't pay you enough and there are clients who pay you too much. There's that cross-subsidization. I believe the universe works like that to a certain extent, so it's not the end of the world. But I do think there's a limit probably to the amount of value that we can add. And the bigger thing is, I think there are too many advisors, and over time, the majority of our big advisors, and the successful ones are the ones who've sold the most, who have added nowhere near value to the amount that they've earned and currently still continue to earn. So I think there's a huge disparity there. We've got people paying fees and they're seeing an advisor once a year. Their portfolios have never been reviewed. We got a new client referred to us by actually these other clients. She's never been asked to do a budget. Now, I'm not sure how you can draw up a financial plan if there isn't a budget. In this case, there is no financial plan. There's money. So, this person's been getting absolutely no value, but they've been paying a handsome price for this, and they've never questioned it because the industry kind of portrays this as a norm. So personally, we looking, and I've chatted to Alan Smith in London from Capital a lot on this. I know he's doing a talk on the 20th of May, which we're definitely going to be watching, about values-based pricing. I'm not sure how it works. That's why we're talking to him. But I just think, and again, I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying I believe there's a better way and a fairer way of doing it. And I think there are a lot of medium to wealthy clients who are paying way more than they need to be paying. A lot of situations are very, very simple. If you've got a single person with one retirement fund versus a couple with a couple of trusts and kids and grandkids and different business structures, something like that obviously takes a lot more work, a lot more skill, and should be priced differently to the simple scenario. And in there, I think, lies massive opportunity. One of the biggest barriers to entry in the industry, I think, around the world for youngsters is that typically the people they're going to deal with don't have money because they're saving. They millennials as well, or Gen Ys, I think, is a new one now. I'm not sure. And so it's very difficult for them. So I think these kind of fee models will help sort that industry out. And I know people talk about the advice gap. I laugh because they're worried about all the people who can't afford to pay for advice. I see it differently. I think of all the people who are paying 10 times more than they should for getting absolutely zero advice. So I think there's enough to go around for everyone. And I do believe that in the next 5 years, even in South Africa, that there's going to be a large change on that side of the industry.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Being able to work with people that might be rich in terms of income, but haven't accumulated assets. By changing your mechanism of pricing, you now can serve those clients. So it doesn't necessarily have to be limited to clients that have accumulated specifically investable assets, right? What about the clients that have large property portfolios? I guess it's just rethinking the way we've always done things. And there's a bit of a theme, I can see throughout your history saying, hey, this model is broken. We need to rethink that. What else is there that kind of you think is broken in the financial services world that we should be paying closer attention to?
I think the industry is still driven very much by your big companies, your life companies, your asset management companies. And unfortunately, I think the problem, we obviously deal with a few of those, and I can tell you that the quality of person at a high level is way, way superior to what it was 10 years ago. And I'm not I'm not saying across the board. I'm just saying generally on how approachable they are, how open they are to a new way of thinking, and trying to actually maneuver those 150 plus year businesses into a different sea. And unfortunately, I don't think the change is going to come from them, because their bosses, their gods are shareholders, and perhaps CEOs who get appointed on a short-term contract and remunerated according to that, which flies in the face of what the people out there actually need. And I've got mates who run asset management businesses, and I joke with them. I say, we do all the work and you make all the money. And I think that needs to change. Again, the fact that you've got a fund that might hold R1 billion, and they're charging 1.5% asset management fee, and then one day it's got 2 billion and they're still charging the same. Again, just does not make sense in any other industry. When you're buying in bulk, you get a discount. And again, if you see how many of those companies are actually outperforming indices, I think South African market's in for a big wake up here. And I think there's an opportunity for the first big player to live with a few unhappy shareholders for a while, but build a long-term business model that's sustainable. Because I think eventually, when it does give, and it will, it's not that it won't, it will, because it's happened in the States, it's happened all over the world, in the UK. They call it, whether you call it passives or evidence-based investing. The fact is that the proof is in the evidence. And to be paying huge fees for very little value just simply doesn't make sense. And in a world where the more we can cut our expenses, the better long-term outcomes we're going to get. That's certainly going to happen. And the public out there are getting smarter and sharper. When you've got businessmen who've been successful because they've paid attention to the bottom line and to expenses, and where are they getting value or where they're not getting value. It's only a matter of time before they start following blindly and the piper, and they start asking a few questions. And I'm seeing it more and more. And yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity for one of the big players, because they have the size to be able to do this, but I'm not really seeing any willingness at the moment.
So am I correct, Dirk, that you're actually kind of embracing that cost discussion with your client and saying, yeah, let's figure out a way to bring down the total cost, as opposed to, seeing cost reduction as a threat to the advisor?
So for instance, with the asset managers we've worked with, it's based on the final outcome. So it's based on the outcome after costs. So even our cash flow modeling, we build in whatever fees they are, the asset management fee, our fee, admin fees, all of that, it's built in. So for me, it's not that no one's allowed to make any money. Of course, everyone needs to feed their families. And if you work really hard, then do very well. That's fine. But where, cost is only an issue in the lack of, where there is no value. And what I'm saying is that clients would be able to achieve certain outcomes a lot easier if certain expenses were maybe more in line with the value that they brought. Yeah, so I think there's a huge margin. There's a huge margin there, and it's going to happen. So our clients are aware of our costs and whatever costs they're incurring. In the first meeting, we run through the asset management fee, the admin fee, and our fee. On every review, we run through that as well. We've, in fact, recently, a few clients, we've sent them documents to reduce their fees, because we have a sliding scale. So because markets have done nicely over the short while, we probably look at it every 2 years or so. So they're actually getting a reduction in their costs, which is quite nice. And for us, they're still a hugely profitable client. So I know this is very contentious, and I know, especially in South Africa, people are saying it won't happen. It's going to happen. It is going to happen. And there are many dinosaurs out there who have done incredibly well personally, financially. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that, times are changing, and that spread could be spread through over a lot more people, and a lot of clients can achieve their outcomes a lot easier without having to pay all these costs over their lifetime.
I guess it's one of the few things that you can control. And we've seen that, just looking at the probability of success, how that increases if someone's fees drop. I want to talk a little bit about the people that you're mentoring. I know there's a group of youngsters or young advisors, even Tapiso, who's your ASISA graduate, if I understood that correctly. How do you see this? How do you see their role in the industry? And also, what are you sharing with them to keep them motivated? Because it can be super lonely, and it's really a tough industry to start out with.
Yeah, so Louis, for me, the biggest, when I first started to work with IPAC and then Access, I started off very, very slowly. It was personally a very tough time for me, and I really wasn't able to focus too much on the business because my family took priority. And what I'll never forget is the people in that business, IPAC and Access, and then the other strategic partners. The way I was treated was as an absolute equal. Yeah, and it's quite emotional for me because, they helped me along and kept me going and made me feel that I was relevant, and it was a tough time. So yeah, now the shoe's kind of on the other foot, and I've built a half decent business. And I think it just started off. I met one of my daughter's mates at a braai, and he was a young planner, just moved to PE. And he had kind of heard about this concept, but didn't really know. But he's a really good chap. And then there are a couple of other youngsters that I chatted to on LinkedIn, and they ask for advice now and then. So what I did is I just started, and I had Alex had started with me. So I just started a young group where the guys would come in once every 5 or 6 weeks, and we would, because people don't know what they don't know. So we talk about lifestyle planning, and people think, oh, well, it's a model. It's not a model. So we would. I would share stuff that I'd learned over time, and like Paul's 3 hats or stuff, from Mitch, Anthony as well, and other people. And so it was just a safe place for them to ask questions, to learn. I took them all through my process. So the process that I'd taken years building, I basically gave them all of the slides, everything. I said, well, you're going to have to change it because it's got client care logo on it. But and build your own process. Something that works for you. But this is a good way to start. So we started doing that, and then obviously the group grew slowly as they told some mates about it, and then COVID hit, and then we moved online, and then then we started getting people all around the country. So it's not a huge group. I think there are about 17 or 18 of us. In the group currently. Yeah, and we take an hour and a half once a month. At the moment, we've just got everyone sharing their onboarding process, how they take clients through, and it's really interesting. And as I said, it's just a safe place for people to ask questions, to not feel intimidated, that they might sound silly, and to discuss certain things. So we try and stay away from like the fee discussion, because that'll go on forever. We don't talk about asset management because that's not lifestyle planning. It's a part of it, but it's not the most important part. And it's just to, there were people that helped me. So I think giving back is really, really important. I personally have a personal mission, or a just cause, as Simon Sinek would call it. To have a living lifestyle financial plan in every home in South Africa, and there's 3 ways. We can't do that on our own. So this is also part of the decision to grow the business, and with personnel, is to try and spread the message more. But we can do that 3 ways. Firstly, by helping youngsters in the business to become better planners, better lifestyle planners. By educating the public, which is something that we need to be doing more, because most people out there don't understand that this is a different thing. They think they've got it because their brokers tell them that they're doing it. And then also, through our own clients, obviously by getting our clients to embrace this, they are able then to spread the word and tell, their friends and family about it. So for me, that's quite a personal mission. And this is one way of doing it, by just kind of spreading the love and, getting more people who become disciples of lifestyle financial planning out there.
That is a really admirable mission. Can you repeat that again for us? A living lifestyle financial plan in every household in South Africa?
Yeah, well, if everyone, regardless of their financial station, went through a process, because part of this is education as well, obviously, and just understood that everything they do is a financial decision. It has an effect now and especially into the future. So, they just, people don't drive themselves to a negative financial position on purpose. They do it because, they've got no one telling them that it might be the wrong thing to do. So, we need to help people with their conscience, and we can do that through education and through coaching and assisting, and just being they call it a trusted advisor, just being a part of their life. That if they can pick up the phone and call us quickly and ask us, what about this or what about that? And we get that. We get, people don't buy vehicles without getting hold and say, well, it's time. Should we do it or shouldn't we do it? And then we have the discussion about what's going on in your life, and do you need it, and how do you feel about it, and all of that. So, but yeah, I mean, if the biggest problem in this country is the huge inequality that there is. And the only way that we can do that, we're dealing with the vast majority in this country who have not had exposure to financial planning. And if they have, it's been the wrong kind of financial planning. It's been policy salesmen who have ripped them off because those people need to survive themselves. And they've got targets and branch managers and regional managers and all that sort of thing. So, it hasn't done anyone any good. So, if we're slowly able to eke away and to educate more people, and that's what I'm saying, if you look at the amount of fee that gets earned in the industry and it's being enjoyed by so few, never have so few earned so much and added so little value. If we could just change that to, and again, it's nothing wrong with being financially successful, but I just think there's a huge disparity between that, and that needs to change. And if we do that, if we get the average South African's wealth to increase, tenfold over a few generations, it will change the outlook for the country completely.
If that's not the positive evolution of financial advice, I don't know what is. And thanks for the massive role that you play in moving this industry into a profession, so that we can actually get to make a bigger impact in our clients' lives. That part that you mentioned, your clients phone you when they have to make a decision on which car to buy. It makes me think that we can think about client requests one or two ways. It can either be, this client's asking for something again, and it can be a burden, or it could be what we're trying to do is working. Our clients are reaching out to us because we help them to make better decisions. They feel more confident after they've had that discussion, and they have more clarity and more purpose. What more can any profession give? I can't imagine of anything else.
Yeah, because, the answer isn't always, yes, you can afford it. It's, well, yes, you can afford it, but what else could you do with that money? And what would that mean to you? And how would that change another aspect in your life? I think our job is, we came in as experts, selling financial concepts and policies and investments. And, then, we got our CFP and we became qualified, and we knew a bit more. And, then we became really good at problem solving. But I think where the future lies is helping clients solve their own problems. We help give them the tools to come up with the answers themselves, because we all know that if you come up with the answer yourself, it becomes ingrained in you, and you will truly follow through, and you will do that, as opposed to, someone standing behind you with a whip and saying, come on, dude, come on, let's do it, So I think that's really where the future lies, is with empowering people. And, if people are thinking that way, then there's a good chance that they're going to educate their kids to a similar mindset. And again, that just then contributes to the betterment of society.
Brilliant. Dirk, I think that's a perfect place for us to end today's conversation. Thank you for being so open and honest and sharing your journey and your client stories and how you see the future. And I wish you all the best with your practice and making a positive difference in South Africa.
Thanks, Louis, and join the cause. I know you do.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers.